Shabbat Shalom to everyone. Before we commence our service, I just want to mention just a few things about COVID and as we try to navigate our way through with the help of so many. The first is to try to follow the rope guidelines. You'll see that there's some ropes, and that sections off some of the synagogue so that people can practice social distancing. Please follow those guidelines. I think everyone, it looks to me like that's happening. The second, that if a person is not vaccinated, to please wear masks. I see people are wearing masks, and I know some people who are wearing masks are in fact vaccinated. And that's an added extra precaution, so you should feel comfortable doing that. I know on the Google, we will do everything we can to practice social distancing. I can tell you that it's difficult to project, it's difficult to sing, and to create a beautiful service with a mask on. So we're going to practice social distancing, but at the same time, we will not be masking during the course of the service. The third thing is probably the most difficult, which is we're a very social community, and part of building a congregation, as important as services are, it's also important after services for us to congregate and to just say Shabbat Shalom to each other, engage in conversation, check in on everybody. We're asking not to linger too much after services, and more important, all of us, myself included, to mask and practice social distancing after services. Does that make some sense for everybody as we continue to address the issues involving the pandemic? Does anybody want to add anything to that? I'm not the final word on this. I was just trying to summarize where we are presently.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
We're going to commence our service with the lighting of the Shabbat candles. I invite Kaylee and Duncan, or Callie, it's Callie, isn't it? Callie, excuse me. Callie and Duncan to come forward to read as these Shabbat candles give light on page 2, and then recite the blessing.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishtishanu lemitzvotav v'tzivanu l'chadik al Shabbat. I apologize.
No need to.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kideshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu להדליק נר
Our service continues with a meditation, Songs Without Words, number 35, composed in 1844 by Felix Mendelssohn, who was the grandson of the great Jewish philosopher Moses Mendelssohn. Beautiful, thank you. Our service now continues on page 7 with the singing of Bin Bam, followed by Maya Fehayom.
Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam. Bim bam, bim
continue now with the Chadodi, a Sephardic version, page 8. We'll chant the first two verses and then rise for the last verse on page 9, and it's verse number 9, Bo'er Shalom. You may be seated. Our service continues now with the Chatzi Kaddish, the Yit Gadal, which can be found on page 11. Whose lives in the Bible? You may be seated. Our service continues now with the two prayers before the Shema. And these prayers actually date back to at least 250 CE, because it's contained or referenced in a writing that we know is dated from that time, and then codified in the Talmud, which is from 400 to 700 CE. So these prayers, the Ma'ariv Aravim and the Yohev Amo Yisrael, are halachically mandated to be recited before the Shema in the evening. So let us join in prayer, top of page 13. Praise to you, Adonai, our God. Together? Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim. And the second, which expresses God's love of Israel, and God's love is expressed through the giving of the Torah. Top of page 14 together. As you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. And we continue now with the Shema and the V'ahavta, page 15, 16, and 17. Please rise.
בכל לבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בעיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למענן תזכרו ועשיתם את מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתיכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
You may be seated. Let us join in a responsive reading, bottom of page 18. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. The Michamocha, page 19, top of the page. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני Ga'al Yisrael. And before we continue our service, we would like to welcome those who are on Zoom. I get the list every service now. And so we want to welcome Karen, Ellie and Cole, Maggie, Phyllis, Jonathan, Harold and Emily, Mel, Sharon and James, Amy and Jack, Robin, Milton and Margaret, Harvey, Shirley, and Miller 52. We have a total of 23 people on Zoom, and we're just delighted that you could join us and be a part of our part of this kehillah, part of this congregation. Our service continues now with the Hashkivenu, top of page 20. The breadth and scope of the music that complements the service is truly extraordinary. We've gone from Mendelssohn to Dropkin to Spartic melodies, all with the intent of what it means to rejoice, what it means to celebrate the Shabbat. I'm noticing, though I'm not exactly positive, we're going to do the Yismachu, and I understand it's a folk melody. And my guess is it's probably the same folk melody that I was exposed to when I was 8 years old in a very conservative congregation. So I'm really looking forward to the Yismachu. Following the Yismachu, one thing that I try to institute over the summer is to expose a smaller group of people to some of the different high holy day nusach that you'll be listening to. The reason I do that is two reasons. Number one is to see whether or not you find it interesting. Second is to see, it's just to expose your ears to the difference. And so that when the high holy days come, it's not such a shock to hear something a little bit different. The melody that you'll hear for the Avot was developed in Eastern Europe, and it was taught, or it was done by a chazan that we had at a congregation in Cincinnati, who had learned it from his Hasidic uncle before the Shoah, before the Holocaust. And so part of our sacredness is to keep that type of music alive. It's a little bit different than the beautiful Hashkivein that we just heard. But we're going to do that, so it's going to sound a little bit different than what we're normally used to. But that's so that we can get into the spirit of the Yamim HaNoarim, which is really just 5 weeks away. So we're going to continue now with the Yismechu, and then we're going to follow that with the Adonai Sefatai Tiftach, and then the Avot. We're going to do that as all one. The Yismechu, those who keep Shabbat by calling it a delight, will rejoice in it in your realm. The people that hallow Shabbat will delight in your goodness, for being pleased with the seventh day you hallowed it. At the most precious of days, drawing our attention to the work of creation, which is the ultimate purpose of Shabbat, is to understand the beauty of this world, the beauty of the universe as something beyond human understanding, and yet something that we rejoice in. Page 22, the Yismechu.
Yismechu v'malechutacha
That was the melody. We didn't do it quite that way, but that was the melody that we did. It was wonderful to hear that and to celebrate the Shabbat in such a beautiful way. Please rise for the tefillah, the Adonai Sefartai Tiftach, followed by the Avod V'Imahot. Adonai Sefartai Tiftach, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, ay, 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 Ha'el Hagadol, ay, 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 Hagibur mi'Adonai el Elyon, Melech Hasadim Tomim V'Konei HaKolai, V'Zocher Chazdei Avot V'Imahot, ay, 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 U'Mevi Geula L'Nei Bneihem L'man Shmo B'Yahava, Melech Ozer, U'Moshiach U'Magei, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Yezrat Sarah, atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, B'chayei HaKol atah Moshiach. V'chalkel chayim b'chesed, v'chayei hakol b'rachamim rabim, tzomech noflim v'rofei cholim, u'matir asurim, u'mekayei memunato l'shenei apor, li'omo chobal v'guvot, u'mido melech, melech meini, oh mechayeh, u'matzmiha, Yeshua, v'ne'emanata, v'achayot ha'kol, Baruch atah Adonai, v'chayei hakol. HaKadosh HaKadosh Kedoshim Hayom Melech HaSelach, Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. And we continue silently now in silent meditation from page 27 to page 33, or in your own silent devotions. You may either stand or, of course, be seated, as is your custom. We continue now with the beautiful Shalom Rav on page 31. Shabbat Shalom to everyone. There are two critical phrases in this week's Torah portion. Moses again pleads with this new generation of Israelites to akav, to cleave to those matters that they are hearing. That is, to love God, to study, and to safeguard God's commandments. He continues, and if you do these very things, the ultimate reward is apparent. V'yahevcha, and I will love you, and I will bless you, increase you, and bless your children, your labor, and you will be blessed among the nations of the world. And the other passage is a little more famous. I'll begin with the Hebrew just because I like to read the Hebrew. Ki lo al halechem, you can almost guess what this verse is. Lechem is bread, right? Ki lo al halechem, and lo means no, so you can already get what this may be driving at. Ki lo al halechem levado yichya ha'adam, ki al kol motza pi Adonai yichya ha'adam. Now the first part of that phrase, everybody is very familiar with. The human being does not live by bread alone. Right? I think everyone has heard that phrase. But it's the B part that people tend not to pay attention to. But all that is brought forth by the word of God does a human being live. Now the passage where Moses proclaims, and I will love you, Who is the I? It appears in context that it is God, because God is going to increase, God is going to bless the children, and so forth. If you take this Torah to heart, then God will safeguard the very covenant that God swore to your ancestors, and that God will love you. This is the plain meaning of the text. But I think there's something else going on as well. If God is not enough for you, then do it for me. I, Moses, who brought you to this point, will love you. I, who have led you to this day, will love you through eternity. My memory of you will be one of love. Continue to be Jewish. Affirm what I have taught you in your own way, and I will always love you. God will always love you. And the passage reads as if this is Moses' last wish before he ascends to Mount Nebo to die. We often forget the context of this beautiful phrase, a person does not live by bread alone, and understand it to mean that to live a purposeful life, one cannot focus solely on the needs of the body. The body is only a stepping stone to the nourishment of the soul. A doctor cannot be a true physician for the purpose of simply earning a great deal of money. Rather, she must be dedicated to her patients. They must work beyond the normal working day if emergencies arise, because their charge is to care for those who are suffering from illness. It is the concern for human life and that intimate connection between one person and another that makes life meaningful, not the compensation. But the Torah is suggesting something even deeper when we examine the full passage. ויענך וירעיבך ויאכילך את חמן אשר לא ידעת ולא ידעון אבותיך למען הודיעך כי לא על הלחם לבדו יחיה האדם כי על כל מוצא פי אדוני יחיה האדם. And in your crying up in the wilderness and in your hunger, God fed you the manna that you did not know and that your forefathers did not know, in order that God would make known to you that a human being does not live by bread alone, for only that which is brought forth from the mouth of God does a human being truly live. And it beautifully concludes, and you know with your heart that just as a parent provides instruction and trains their children, so too does God provide you all with instruction. We all know that there is more to life than material concerns that nourish the body. All of us know that. The children of Israel came to learn in their 40 years of wandering in the wilderness that they survived not simply because they were fed manna. The lesson of the manna is that everything ultimately comes from forces beyond our control, and that the only control we actually have is how we live and by what principles we affirm by the way that we live our lives. Moses is exhorting his children to live by the very principles, the very essence of Torah, not keeping one mitzvah or not keeping another mitzvah, but going deeper than that, understanding that life is worthwhile by living underneath those principles that are expounded in the Torah. So what does Torah mean when it says, I will love you? What does that mean? It's a little different than how we view it sometimes in secular society. And this is where religion can make a difference and contribute to society rather than, this is not in my text, rather than be involved in political issues. I think religion loses something when it interjects itself into political issues rather than ethical and moral teachings. So what is love of Torah? that you can take from here? What is it that society, the larger society, can take? Love is not to emulate exactly what one generation of Jews do to honor those who precede them. Love is an affirmation that the underlying guiding principles of one generation provides instruction and guidance for the next generation. We, quote, teach our children, Vishinantam levanecha, we shall teach our children how to live a life of meaning and purpose. And the underlying principles of Torah that Rabbi Akiva says is the great principle of the Torah, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as if you love yourself. And you do that by being good to others, to take care of the poor, and by taking care of each other. Moses' love for the Jewish people, Moses' love for today, for us today, is affirmed because we live by Torah. It may not be the Torah that Moses envisioned to be practiced by his descendants. It may not be the Yismachu that I learned growing up as a child, but nevertheless, it is Yismachu. We shall rejoice. It is our Torah. It is our life, our meaning, the length of our days, and our purpose. It is the true bread by which humanity lives. Amen. We continue now to reflect on these words and reflect on the beauty of this service by an aria from the Goldberg Variations by Bach. The service continues now with the Misha Berach prayer on page 34.
May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen.
We now turn to the people who are on Zoom. I'll ask that they be unmuted and to add the names of those in need of spiritual, physical, or emotional healing.
Robin Mayer,
Judy Stein, Mark Schoenfeld, and Mamie Grossman.
Anyone else on Zoom? We now turn to the congregation, and as my eyes meet your gaze, please say the name of those so we can include them in our thoughts and prayers. Thank you. Alex Glass, Dan Martin, Reese. Charmaine Mosher.
Did,
Susan Bruce.
did anyone? Hello?
Thank you.
Hmm.
Yes, Mandy.
Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Please rise for the Alenu on page 35.
Thank you.
may be seated. This week, we observed the yard sites of Leah Rader, Arnold Hart, Anna Burkhauer, Edwin Zelniker Jr., and Emma Rader. Is there anyone observing a yard site or saying Kaddish for someone who they wish to remember? Is there anyone on Zoom? Ask once again for them to be unmuted. And ask for them to recite the names of anyone who is observing a yard site or saying Kaddish for someone. In solemn testimony to that unbroken faith which links generations one to another, let those who mourn now rise and join in the recitation of the Kaddish, Kaddish for mourners and those observing yard site, those whose tradition it is to join in its recitation. The congregation may rise. Page 43. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shmei Rabbah, V'alma divrach chidutei, v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon, v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, v'agala u'vizman kariv imru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevorach, ve'olam u'almei almaya, Yitborach v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar, v'yitrobam, v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitala, v'yitala, Shemei d'kudsha p'rirchu, v'yela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, ta'amiran v'yalma v'imru, Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. May God, who establishes peace unto the heavens, grant peace and comfort in the hearts of all who mourn, and let us say, Amen. You may be seated. We want to wish a happy birthday to Harriet Simon, Leslie Miller, Ada Small, and Patty Kunstad, who's actually celebrating her birthday today. And once again, our happy anniversaries are extended this month to Margaret and Milton Brown. They are actually online, so we want to once again wish you a happy anniversary. Maury and Michael Sternberg, Diane and Richard Frank, who celebrated their 53rd anniversary here. Patty and Gary Fishbein, and Sarisa and Paul Frankel. Announcements. Once again, I want to remind everyone that next week, because it will be the first week in August, a few things. Number one, we will return to the Mishkan Tefillah, and we want to thank the individuals involved who created this booklet. We may find ourselves using it again later on, we'll see. Hopefully not, but we want to thank everyone who was involved in putting this wonderful booklet together. So services next week will be, of course, at 6:15. There'll be tour study Wednesday. Now that will be both by Zoom and in person for now. Please watch for any announcements, however. And there'll be a Shabbat morning service in the chapel next Shabbat morning. That will be at 10 o'clock, I believe. Any other community announcements? Would anyone like to chant the Kiddush this evening? No takers.
Asher Kedishanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu Shabbat Parsho v'yavav uvratzo Inchilanu Zikaron v'maaseh v'leishti Ilu yom techila v'mikvarehu Zeher l'tziyat v'yitzrayim Anu v'charta, Anu kidashta, Mikohamim, V'shabbat kodshecha, Yahava u'v'ratzon, V'chatanu, Baruch atah Adonai, V'kadesh Hashem.
It's absolutely the best wine on Friday night. No substitutes now. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and may God guard you. Na'er Adonai panav elecha v'chunecha. May God shine God's countenance unto you and be gracious unto you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. And may God always lift up God's presence unto you and give you peace and wholeness of life. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.